I was convicted and sentenced to prison for 5 counts of bank robbery, armed robbery. At the age of 17, I was introduced to cocaine for the first time. A family member of mine that had introduced me to it. From there started a lifestyle of selling cocaine. You know, as I started selling, I also started using. The using became an addictive lifestyle as well. The amount of money I heard that you could accumulate by selling. And then after that became, the people, the power, having a lot of friends, so-called friends. A lot of things were exciting about it. I got to go places I probably never would have gone before, and at a young age, it's just, it was a good thing for me then. I thought it was a good thing. The Lansing Department Police, they actually did a raid on one of the houses that I was manufacturing marijuana at, and that's where I started to go on the run. I moved out into the Detroit area. I set up some places there where I started actually selling cocaine. I was on the run, and because my usage was becoming more and more, and the greed of money, I can remember it as plain as daylight. I was laying in bed, it was like 3:30 in the morning. And I had this whole big plan, but I need more money. And the thought was, I got up and I just said to myself, I'm gonna go rob some banks. It was like 7 o'clock in the morning. I got in the car, I had a 9mm with me, and on my way there, all I could think about was, this is gonna get me some more money. I robbed my first bank. From there, just one bank after another. I went on a so-called bank spree. And one bank became easier after another. Before I know it, I'm in the news, they're looking for me. They don't know who I am, but they're asking about information, and it just became easier. And the amount of money that I was getting, it just kept me hooked. And so I just continue to keep making the wrong choices. In Dearborn, Michigan, I was arrested and sent to the county jails. I remember looking at life sentences. They were telling me that I would be looking at life upon life upon life upon life. So basically, I didn't see any daylight coming. I felt myself at the lowest part of life. I can't even articulate what that really means. I remember being in the cell, but I remember seeing a Bible on the table, and something about it just drew me there. And I knew then that I was in trouble. I knew that I had to surrender, but I didn't know who to surrender to. I didn't know where to go with it. I took out the Bible and I read Psalms 23. I was drawn to it. I just didn't know how to make the change. There was a lot of pain, there was a lot of shame, a lot of guilt from the things I was carrying. I didn't have to live in that shame. I didn't have to live in that guilt, and that Jesus would set you free. And I received that gift. This one individual owed me some money. I had plans on hurting this individual, and I didn't want to, but because of the nature of prison and the laws of prison, there are some things that in the natural you have to do unless you want other problems. But for the first time after I got saved, I remember specifically coming to God that night. It was like 12:30 at night, and I prayed and I asked God, I don't know who you are. You say you're Jesus, you say you love me. I don't feel the change. I want change. And I almost became angry, and I almost, just became angry at him. And I said, listen, I'm about to do something again. I'm about to hurt someone. I don't want to do this, but I don't know how to say no. I don't know how to stop it. And I remember asking God, if this is something that you can save me from, take me from. And this is what I said, I'll promise you that I will follow you for the rest of my life. But if you don't help me here, I truly believe this will be it. And I remember being on the bunk, and I got up and I lay down. Well, it was like 5 o'clock, 6 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, I hear the keys from the guards, the CO officers, and they come in and they say, Talamantez, you've got to pack. Did someone snitch on me? Did someone, the guy's life could have been threatened. Did he say anything? And they came and got me. Whatever it was, I know in my heart that God had heard my prayer. He answered me. He answered me specifically. And that's where he met me. And it was from that day forward that I really believe I fell in love with God. My heart was given to him because he truly showed himself real. He showed himself alive. And I was a dead person. And I believe that day I was resurrected. And I came up before the parole board. My dad was sitting next to me, and the parole officer, he asked me specifically, he said, I want to know how many bank robberies did you rob? And everything in me knew that there was more than what I was convicted for. I remember hearing God, the truth will set you free. Well, we all got the stubborn in us, and I'm one of those people who can be stubborn, so I try to sugarcoat things and said, okay, God, I hear you, but this is how we're going to answer. And I answered him, and I said I was convicted and sentenced and guilty of 5 bank robberies. And the look in his eye was almost like angry, like, you know exactly what I'm asking you, and why aren't you answering me? That's what I felt as he looked at me. And I remember he just kind of breathed in, and he slammed his hand on the table. And it was like almost like a shock. And he looked at me, and he kind of leaned up, and he said, I'm going to ask you one more time. How many bank robberies are you responsible for? And I remember everything in me, the Lord telling me, this is your time to be truthful. This is your time to be transparent. This is your time not to fear, but to tell the truth. To tell the truth because it's going to set you free. And I remember looking at him and said, I am responsible for 16 bank robberies. And he said, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. And I remember his statement was, I will be sure to tell law enforcement. I told him the truth. And I believe it was a month later I was released from prison. God said that the Spirit of the Lord God is upon me because the Lord has anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and the opening of prison to them that are bound, to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all that mourn. A year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, I found myself relapsing back into the usage of cocaine. And being married to a beautiful lady, it was a shock. It was a shock to everybody. It was a disappointment. Just very hard to accept. It was a struggle, and it was almost, it's troubling for me because being a Christian man now, knowing what I know, I ask myself a lot of times, how did I get here? How did this happen? Without blaming anyone, without making excuses, taking responsibility for where I'm at. I was put on probation for 6 months. Had to go through drug therapy and the whole thing again. I am very blessed that I didn't wind up in prison. I could have been sent back according to the judge. They could have sent me back.